Hello and welcome to a troubleshooting edition of the Radio Mechanic. Before we get started, we have some important business to discuss. Get your bets in now as to how many miles the coffee cup will get while I'm carrying on here today before I drink the coffee. I know that's foremost in a lot of people's minds that my coffee cup gets a lot of mileage on the table. Just kidding, guys. I got a real kick out of the responses to my nervous fidgeting. Back after I restored my version of the Emmerson, we put this set on the table and did a bare minimum power up on it just to see if the radio was viable. And when we knew it was a viable set, I offered it up to Vic, and the guy who donated the speaker for Thomas's Carr radio. And incidentally, that radio, thanks to Vic, is on its way back to Ovid, and Thomas will be putting that in his 47 Chevy here shortly. I have several projects going. I have several videos started, but I'm waiting on little bits and pieces to finish up the videos. I got like 3 of them in the queue, but I'm waiting on stuff. Yesterday, some tubes came in when I was working on the first Emmerson. You remember I was stealing 1T4s out of my Emmerson to work on this Emmerson. Well, I ordered several to throw into stock just so I'd have them here. Whenever I need a tube, I buy a few so I can have them in stock next time around. So I had a full complement of tubes for this, and since all the other videos were dead end, I said, let's see if we can fix the motorboating in this. And I had confidently stated that it had to be a bypass capacitor. And I'm still confident that's the problem with this set. There's a capacitor somewhere that's open. Or changed value so much that it's not working. So let me get some notes on the schematic so I've got some component values to work with so I know what I'm looking at, because these schematics just have C and R numbers. You got to keep going back and forth. So let me put some notes on the schematic itself and we'll get started and see if we can fix the motorboating. Let's see if the radio mechanic's as good as he thinks he is. Alright, I've gone through the parts list. I've noted the critical values I'm going to be looking at here on the schematic. That way when I'm looking underneath this thing, which is a very compact mess, and I say mess because whoever was in here before me just left it a mess. And I'm not sure what they were doing, but virtually every capacitor in here has been lifted, cut out, and put back in the circuit without replacing it, with a couple of exceptions. I believe this is a replacement. This is a Lafayette, and I'm sure, you know, so that's a replacement cap. Whether or not this filter cap is original, I don't know. Is there a name on it? L-A-F-A-Y. Nope, that's a replacement. That's a Lafayette also. Anybody remember Lafayette radio? They used to be fairly popular at one time. Them, Allied radio. Oh, we won't go into a memory lane thing here. But anyway, this capacitor, both ends of this have been chopped and it's been put back in. This one's been disconnected, lifted, put back in. This one's been cut, J-hooked, put back in. This has been removed from the chassis and put back in. There's a couple of caps down there you can't see that I can see the J-hooks on them. They've been chopped out, put back in. These have been J-hooked, that's been J-hooked. The 2 capacitors that I replaced over here had been cut and put back in the circuit. You know, these look like, this looks like an original. The 2 down here certainly look original. The ones that are up in there are the same ones that were in mine. So I'm guessing they're original. Even the capacitors, and this is mind-boggling. Even the capacitors on the antenna on this thing have been cut and stuck back on. That one's just tacked in place. This one's been cut and J-hooked, and just, you know, from looking at the condition of the wax, that's got to be an original cap. But somebody's cut everything. I can see more cuts and J-hooks down in here. There's another one right there. Every cap in here has been cut and resoldered back in with a J by, you know, J-hooking the ends. So somebody was trying to troubleshoot something in this set and evidently gave up, and maybe they were trying to fix the motorboating issue. Maybe that's why this set ended up in the scrap heap at some point in time, and it finally ended up on eBay, because it's not recent work. Somebody was in here quite a while ago. There haven't been Lafayette capacitors around in many, many years. I don't know who made that white one. The name's been scraped off. Can't tell. At any rate, somebody's been in here working on this set. And I use the word working loosely. But, just as a reminder, let me plug it in, and we'll take a listen to what it sounds like. If I can get the plug in here one-handed. I'm going to have to stand up to do this. Got to move the camera, guys, sorry. Let's get everything back in frame here. I've got the power on. This should be warming up. There we go. Can you hear it purring away? That's motorboating. And let's see if we can sink the motorboat, shall we? That is almost always the sign of a bad / open bypass capacitor. It's one of the first things, if you read old troubleshooting tomes, they'll talk about that. Now, we've got our AVC is generated here in our detector / AVC tube, first audio tube. Comes down through a 2.2 mega ohm resistor, splits off through a 3.3 mega ohm resistor, and we've got a bypass capacitor here, which is in the third grid, or the mixer grid, of our converter tube. We have, let me follow, oh, here we go, back down. We come along here. Here's another bypass capacitor. This is going up into our RF amplifier. If any of these capacitors are bad, you're going to end up with like a feedback loop. The gain of the tube will go up, the AVC will see it, shove it back down. All of a sudden the gain is gone, the tube goes back into amplification, and you end up with this motorboating. You end up with what you hear, this little purring sound. And sometimes it's more like a pop, 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 pop. Other times it's like this one, is a little soft purring in the background. But somewhere we have a bypass capacitor that's bad. I am 100% positive of that. My confidence is high. We'll see if we can shoot it down. Now I'm going to use old school troubleshooting here. Back in the day when these sets were still common, you'd take a set like this to the repairman, and he wouldn't do like we do today, just go in and change all the capacitors. The customer wouldn't have been up for that. Back in the day, he would have gone through and bridged these capacitors with another capacitor until he found the one causing the problem, pull that one out of the circuit and replace it, make sure the radio played fairly well or correctly, and give it back to the customer. The customer didn't want to pay for a complete recapping every time the set went in. And there used to be charts or graphs or whatever you want to call them that would tell you acceptable leakage limits on all of these capacitors. And for bypass caps, you'd have a certain amount of leakage that was acceptable. On coupling caps, you'd have a different amount of leakage that was acceptable. In an oscillator circuit, you'd have again, a different value. Right down to the filter caps, they tell you, with a certain microfarad, say a 20 microfarad cap at 100 volts, you're perfectly good if you've got less than 1 milliampere or 2 milliamperes of leakage. You didn't just shotgun stuff back in the day. You just, you let it ride out until it failed. And then the radio would go in and be repaired for that one component. You take your car now to a small repair shop, and if you've got a good mechanic, he'll go in and find the component that's giving you the trouble. You take the damn thing to the dealer, and they just shotgun everything and charge you $2,000, and half the time that still doesn't fix it. But what I'm going to do is, most of these caps are 0.02 microfarad. What else do we got? 0.02, 0.02, 0.02, 0.02. There's a no, that's a coupling cap. There's a 0.01 bypass there. I'll just bridge that with a 0.02, close enough. What we're looking for is the one that stops the motorboating, and we know we've found the problem. This is how they would have done it back in the day, the old school method. Let me dig out a couple of capacitors, or a capacitor, and we'll get started here. Okay, we'll start up here with this 1R5. It's down all the way down the end of the radio. That is our converter tube, and there's a 0.0027 002 on pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on our schematic on pin 5 there's nothing. However, if we come down here on the 1R5, there's our O2, there's a 0.25. It's probably these caps, because if I trace this wire down, that capacitor is also on pin 7 of the 1T4, and 1T4 is the next one in line. So they've got a 0.02 002 instead of a 0.02 in there. May have been a change, but it's a bypass capacitor, and it's bypassing the cathodes is what it's doing, because the filaments are the cathodes in these radios. So let's just see what happens. Absolutely no change. So that's not our guy. I hope you can hear that over the furnace running in the background. We've got -2 degrees outside and winds of about 20 miles an hour today. There's wind chill warnings of -30 up north, -35, 30, 35. Pretty brutal outside today. I used to go out cross-country skiing at 20 below. As long as there wasn't any wind, you'd be quite comfortable working out in the woods on the cross-country skis. But if there was wind, we stayed home. Wind chill will kill you. Alright, moving along here. So we know that's not our problem. That's not a bypass. That one's a bypass. That's a mica cap. So I'm not too worried about that guy. We've got 1, 2, 3 capacitors right here going to ground. That one, this one, and the other end of this guy. Is that a bypass? Wow. It's just floating in space down here. Not a good way to do things. But we'll bridge those 3 capacitors and see if I get lucky there. Well, what I'm going to do, I think, just to make this easy, I'm going to solder this to ground right here and then just poke it on the rest. Poke it in the areas where I want to try to bypass. Now, I'm playing with hazardous voltage here. I am on an isolation transformer. And when I'm doing this, I'm working with one hand, so if something happens, I don't have a ground path through my heart. I don't think my cardiologist would like me shocking my triple bypass. But we'll go in and we'll try bypassing the bypass capacitors and see if we have any improvement. Let me get this soldered. Okay, we have our capacitor going to ground. And I'm going to go after some of these bypass caps. 1, 2, 3 hidden down there. Got 1, 2, 3 of them. And we'll see if we have any success there. So let's go on the first one. Its ground is there, okay. No change. So it's not that one. Not that one. Got one more to check. It's not that one. Now we've got a couple of micas in here. I'm not worried about those. In fact, let's see, that one's on pin 1, 2 of the 1S5. 1S5, pin 2. Is that right? Pin 1, 2. Pin 1, 2 on the 1S5. 3, 6, yeah, 0.02. Yeah, I don't think that's going to do anything for us. Let's try it out. That's not it. We'll try our coupling cap. I'm expecting the frequency to change, and it does. But that's not our cap. It would have stopped it. Alright, what else have we got? I would have expected a cathode bypass cap here on the amplifier tube, but here's something interesting. We've got a filament bypass cap down here, 100 microfarad. Let's see where that is. That's on pin 1 of the 3Q4. 1, 2, 3. That's 100 microfarad. Looks like a Lafayette. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting indeed. Let's see what the parts list says here. I've got 100 microfarad written down, and that says 20 microfarad. That is... We're recording? Yeah, we are. C26. This says 100 microfarad, 25 volt electrolytic, which is what this... Well, no, this is a 20 microfarad, 150 volt. That's weird. 25 volt, and they got 20 microfarad. And 100 microfarad, they got 150 volt. Let me grab... And what's interesting, the 1T4 is our RF oscillator. The first tube that they're, you know, this tube's out of circuit. The 3Q4 is not in circuit, but this number 1 is tied to number 7 of the 1T4, which is our first RF amp. That's V1. This is V1. The 1R5 is V2. V2 says V2 here. V3 and 4, V3 and 4. So V1, that 100 microfarad cap is on this heater, or this filament, which is the cathode. Let's see what happens. Let me get a 100 mic cap and bypass that guy. Yeah, I can remove this guy. We're not going to need it, I don't think. Well, I'll leave that there for now. Let me grab a 100 mic cap. Oh, So 100 microfarads. What do we got? Let's check the other drawer here. 100 microfarads. 25 volts. There we go. That'll be good enough for a test. 100 microfarad, 25 volts versus the beast that's in there. But if you remember from the work we did on the other set, we have 5 volts at this point, unless the heaters go open, and then it soars up to about 24 volts. So the 25 volt cap would be fine for this. Let's see. I need a ground point. There's a ground point. I gotta shut the power off here before I solder this in, because I gotta get down in there with the soldering iron. Where's my little one? Here we go. We'll tin these leads up. I'm just gonna tack this in real quick. And again, I've got no plans to resurrect this thing all the way, because this is just a spares radio. My other one's up and working. Although I've been restoring the front plate on my set, I just wasn't happy with the way it looked. So while I was at it, I pulled the front plate off of this set and beat some of the dents out of it as well. And we'll see how it looks when I'm finished. It may push me into restoring both of them at some point. Here, I won't burn my fingers if I use this guy. Let's bridge this cap. Oh yeah, perfect. Let's see what we got. Turn it back on. No caps exploded yet. Wait for it to warm up.
Of medicine, turmeric and its derivative curcumin.
Look at that.
And I'll say this right off the bat, that there are almost
Fixed.
no plant materials in the world
Fixed.
as extensively studied as this.
And if we look at this, this is bypassing this cathode and holding the voltage steady on this filament, which is the cathode of this tube here. Now you don't see that capacitor up here. It's in the schematic down here. It's actually on pin 7 here. With this capacitor being only 20 microfarad instead of the required 100 microfarad, we get voltage fluctuations, gain fluctuations on the tube, which are going to travel right down the whole string into the audio amp. This cathode voltage is going to fluctuate because the signal's going up and down, which is going to feed back into that cathode for this tube, which is the filament, and we just have a continuous loop. That's where the motorboating was. I'll bet somebody way in the past, in a hurry to work on this thing, looked at the parts list and saw 100 microfarad, or 100 microfarad, 25 volt, and transposed in his head to 20 microfarad instead of 25. He said, 20 is going to be close enough, and it probably would have been. And 100 microfarad, he transposed to 100 volt and said 150. Oh,
I'm reminding you, dinner is ready.
thank you. Cancel notification, cancel reminder, whatever the hell it is. Alexa, cancel reminder. My lunch is ready. Perfect timing.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's fine. You can stop. Thank you. Where was I? Lost my train of thought. Went right off the tracks. Oh, I'll bet he said 150 is better than 100 volts, and 20 microfarads as good as 25. He probably got the numbers reversed in his head, and then spent the rest of the next 2 days trying to figure out what other capacitor was bad causing his motorboating, because he knew this one was brand new and it wasn't a problem. But
during aging as a result of fat accumulation in tissue and insulin sensitivity.
no more motorboating.
To protect against those things. It's a powerful immune regulator. And you know,
as we had said originally during when we got this thing powered up and working, I told you it just needed a recap, and there it is.
French paradox, you know, the French needle.
Sounds like the tuning cap needs a little cleaning.
Seems complete.
And an alignment probably, but the antenna is laying down at this point.
Take resveratrol, you get brain blood flow, you get more.
So there you go, this one's fixed. That's how you troubleshoot a motorboating receiver. Now again, the right thing to do to this set, if you wanted to really put it back together correctly, would be change every capacitor in here, because I guarantee every one of them's leaking. But it shows you how resilient these sets are.
It's called the Medicine Hunter as well.
It sounds just fine, even though it's got a whole plethora of waxy caps still in there. And they built them well back in those days. Okay, wraps this one up, short and sweet. I'm going to go have my lunch and see what else we can find to work on. I'm the Radio Mechanic. Hope somebody found this information useful. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.